Hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, and today we're talking about the inner child,
Yeah.
which is super, super exciting. We probably definitely will do more than one video
Yeah.
on inner child.
Yeah.
Um, so this, I would say, is kind of like an intro
Mhm.
to inner child, and and also inner child work, like doing the work to heal your inner child, take care of your inner child, nurture your inner child.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we wanted to start with the archetypes
Sure.
of the inner child.
Sure.
So I'm just going to go ahead and go through them. So the first one is um, inner child orphan. And these cards are from the Caroline Myss archetype cards. I'll show you that box, but we'll definitely put a link to it as well.
Mhm.
Um, and then the next one is child divine, divine child. And the next one is magical child, magical child. And then child eternal, which this one also could be called Peter Pan.
Yep.
Um, and next is the wounded child.
Mhm.
And last but not least is the nature child. So those are the six main inner child archetypes.
Mhm.
Everyone has orphan.
Mm-mm.
No?
No, everybody has a child.
A child.
Yeah.
But I thought for some reason it was like everybody had prostitute, saboteur, and orphan. I thought those were kind of three.
Prostitute, saboteur, and victim.
Okay, prostitute, saboteur, and victim, not orphan.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, and then just for folks who are interested, this is, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Carolyn Miss archetype card deck that both you and I use.
Yeah.
I'll start with orphan. Um, the light attributes of orphan are independence based on learning to go it alone and conquering fear, the fear of surviving.
Mm-hmm.
The shadow attributes of orphan, feelings of abandonment that stifle maturation, seeking inappropriate surrogate families.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay,
Um,
because we can definitely
we could
go
do a
into that one.
whole video just on orphan.
Just on orphan. Yeah,
Oh boy.
orphans pretty intense.
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, and I can see why you thought that everybody would have this archetype because at some point most of us go through this orphan stage, right? Like, I mean, in the normal scheme of life, the way it should be, the child loses their parents rather than the parent loses their child, which obviously does not always happen. But
Of course.
that's what is considered to be the normal.
The normal trajectory. Yeah.
So I can see where that would come from. Plus and like the other normal trajectory would be like kids going off and getting older and getting married, which would then like detach them from their
Primary
parental.
nuclear family.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we know that that doesn't always exist and that doesn't always happen, especially in our world now. Like we're not in that paradigm anymore, right? Like it's
Yeah.
changing. But the way that I see the orphan is then the orphan in general as like a neutral archetype is a child who is totally free of being rooted down,
Mm.
being having to follow specific familial, generational, tribal rules.
Traditions,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. She or he is like, yeah, just an individual in the most individual way you can be, right? Because you're the other last week when we looked at the cards, I is the first time I ever noticed it being called abandoned, right?
Mm,
Abandoned child. So
yeah.
as the other term for it. It's in the it's in a little booklet. It's not on the card itself.
Right.
But it's the pain of that, right? Is that you have nobody guiding you, you have nobody supporting you. You
No
don't,
safety net.
yeah, yeah. So you're really like on your own. And it's how are you going to use that being on your own? And when, at what point do you connect with your divinity? At what point
Hmm.
do you connect with your higher self, with source, with universe, with God, with however you want to call the bigger self, with the bliss body, however you want to call that? At what point do you connect with it so that you're not feeling small? You're really
Hmm.
feeling and taking ownership of your power in the world.
Well, well, I love how on the card it says conquering fear of surviving. Because
Yeah.
I think that that's one thing when you are out on your own, that it's like, well, how do you survive if you don't have that foundational structure in place, or even know what that foundational structure looks like or feels like? So to me, the fact that they're like narrowing that
Mhm.
on this particular child archetype is
Yeah.
I feel like that's very, very powerful based on everything that you just shared about the
Yeah.
orphan and how you see the orphan,
Yeah.
because they're incredibly independent,
Super.
super independent, yet at the same time there's the independence with without without the structure, with like the orphan, the orphan child is creating
Their own.
their own structure,
Yeah.
their own foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps then to use your other archetypes to build that, right? If you have visionary, if you have rebel, if you have um I don't know,
Femme fatale
yeah,
or
whatever.
storyteller queen.
Yeah. Then you use those to help you build your ways, your um yeah, your ways of being that you want, right? You have no obligation.
Yeah, no
Any,
restriction.
yeah. Yeah.
So you have to create that for yourself. You
Hmm.
have to create those guardrails for
Yeah.
yourself. You have
Oh,
to create
it's a lot of
those
work.
boundaries.
It's a lot of work.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right. Anything else you want to say?
I think that's good on the orphan.
Okay. So next up, we'll do divine child. And the light attributes of divine child are innocence, purity, redemption, suggests a special connection with the divine. Um, and the shadow attribute is the inability to defend oneself against negative forces. So
Mm.
kind of being like railroaded or like run over, not necessarily having healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
I think the other piece of the divine child would be somebody who, um, is kind of hanging out in um, their um, their kind of bliss body, and not necessarily being grounded,
Yeah.
um, here on earth, and
Yeah.
like connected and present with what's actually, might be coming at them, or what might be happening in their life.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Could come off as a little bit like out of body astronaut kind of like airhead.
Flighty,
Flighty. Yeah,
distracted.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There you go. All right. But I think the other piece that's really interesting about the divine child, because I actually have divine child.
So do I.
What?
So do I.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is the connection,
Hmm.
is that kind of special connection that you really like, at least for me, my experience of it was always being aware of it, like even from being a child.
Yeah.
Um, not necessarily having the words or the context, or being able to put it into um, like verbal expression, but feeling it and knowing it. And there was a period of time, like like I just remember for myself, there was like this moment of realization where I was like, oh, everyone else isn't like experiencing life or isn't perceiving life in the
Yeah.
same way that I am. And there
Yeah.
was this kind of like light bulb moment, like, wait a second,
Yeah.
and then it kind of drove my curiosity even more, because then it just gave me like a sounding board to play up against, to understand that connection to the divine even more.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that.
Cool. All right, so next up is magical child, and the light attributes of magical child are seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, and the belief that everything is possible.
I also have this archetype.
There you go. There you go. Um, I I feel like I'm very good friends with this archetype, but I don't have this archetype.
You are very good friends with this archetype.
Yes, I'm very good friends with this archetype. And then the shadow attributes are pessimism, depression, disbelief in miracles, believing that energy and actions are not required for growth.
Mm.
Um, which that's that, I think that linchpin, balance about, for some folks, they end up getting stuck,
Yeah.
in that, like in the faith of everything will be okay,
Mm.
which is a true statement in
Yeah.
and of itself. Yet at the same time, there is there are actions, there is participation, there's a co-creation, there's a co-creative piece of it. And if you just kind of sit still,
And kind of go like this.
right,
Yeah. You gotta
then
practice the magic. You gotta be the magic. You gotta work with the magic. Um,
yeah,
it's
understand the alchemy, like how
yeah,
you put the different pieces together.
yeah,
It's a practice.
yeah.
And I would say it's a daily practice.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's something that, manifestation. I mean, would you say that that's part of it, is like that manifestation is part of the magical child archetype?
Yeah, maybe. I can see that. I think
Yeah.
it's partly because of the way we see things as possible,
Mm,
right? Because there is at that completely inhibited place before all the conditioning gets on top of it. We're walking around the world like we see it all like, oh yeah, this is easy, this is easy, this is easy. Oh, you want to fly in a car? Sure. Why wouldn't that happen? Like, you
yeah.
want to uh, have dinner on the moon? Sure. Why wouldn't that happen? So I haven't like looked into like, I don't know, like Elon Musk or like, like that those kind of people's archetype charts. But I would imagine along with like a visionary, for example, they would have this type of archetype, like the magical, because
Right.
it opens up all this, like all these possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you definitely hear people say, um, if you can imagine it, if you can believe it, then it can
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And like that vibration to me is that's a manifesting vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else on the magical?
Um, if you have her, you know, like I think with a lot of these archetypes, it's like the when did they? Well, I'll leave that for then. I'll leave that for later. Okay,
Okay. All
whatever.
right. Okay, fantastic. All
I don't
right.
want to go
So
off on a tangent. Go
we're definitely good at that.
ahead.
Okay, so next up is the eternal child. And the light attributes of the eternal child are determination to remain young in body, mind, and spirit,
Mhm.
ability to see things with fresh eyes. And the shadow attributes are inability to grow up and be responsible, extreme dependency on others for physical security.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know a few of these people. Very interesting to watch them as adults.
Mm,
Um, and I'm thinking, like when you said that, I think about the shadow is like the one that's very obvious.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think from an enlightened perspective, well, I mean, I'll give you an example from yesterday. I met with a friend, um, who's probably in her 60s, I would assume. I'm not sure her exact age, but um, she the way she described herself was, um, I don't feel my age because I feel like I'm like 14, but the way I look is not aligned with how I feel. And
Right.
she's also, and she's just one of these people where you're around and you're swimming in beauty
Mm,
and like generosity and light. And she just wants to play,
mm,
right? Like play in this space. And then there's also the eternal child essence of it, where there's the wound from the childhood that
mm,
continues carrying on, and she's not able to let go of.
mm,
So both of those, like the beauty of it
mhm.
is continuing to this, you know middle age, with the wound.
With the wound
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of, I said earlier that this is often also called like, the Peter Pan archetype.
Yeah.
You know, the child that, never wants to grow up. Um, but I think another characteristic of this eternal child archetype um is connection to children,
Mm,
being able
yes.
to play with children, being able
Yes.
to um, communicate effectively with children, and like and not in a way that is, you know, speaking down to them,
Mm,
or it's like they're
yeah.
present, they're right with them,
Yeah.
they're on their level, they know where they're at, they know
Yeah.
how to play, they
Yeah.
know how to like set boundaries, they know how to communicate. um
Totally.
so I think that's another, I've seen that in folks who I know who have this,
Yeah.
just really being able to connect with all different kinds of children from all different kinds of backgrounds, from all
Yeah.
different kinds of places.
Yeah.
um and that's a really, really beautiful thing, because I think, there are so many kids out there who are surrounded by, adults or caretakers who, are overwhelmed, busy, distracted, um, who aren't able to, get connect with the children
Yeah.
in their world in that way.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and and kids really, I mean, children, they all need that
Yeah. They need it.
for sure. All right. Anything else on Eternal Child?
Yeah, I think that was good.
Okay. All right. So next up is Wounded. Wounded Child. The light attributes of Wounded Child are awakens compassion and desire to serve others, other wounded children. Opens learning path for forgiveness or of forgiveness, learning how to forgive. And then the shadow attributes is blames all dysfunctional relationships on childhood wounds, resists moving through the forgiveness.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of wounded children out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good, like the saying, hurt people hurt people. I think that's
Hmm.
exactly to the wounded child.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the shadow aspect of the
Yeah.
wounded child.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 I
for
mean,
sure. For sure.
yeah, the enlightened wounded child are, the therapists and the like community organizers and, nonprofit workers who are really like, and that's like on a grand scale, not on like the individual level, but the of where they're going and reaching out and being of service to
Hmm.
heal and to to work with those children who
Yeah.
need help, or the adults who need help.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are some folks who've made it to adulthood who still have not healed
Yeah.
their wounds and or acknowledge they're like, why do I keep hitting this particular wall or this particular cycle in my life over and over and over again? And
Mhm.
part of that is
Yeah.
because of not healing those wounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's a I there's so much, like, there's so much depth in the wounded child because there's so much pain and hurt and suffering and confusion and all of that.
Yeah.
And then there's so much potential in the wounded child for
Which,
the healing and being of service, like you said.
yeah, I think what I want to say about that, as you're mentioning it, is for parents who are raising children with this archetype,
Mm,
I think that part of what happens is that when the wounded because they're so sensitive, right? They're hyper aware of what is going on, and then they internalize it.
mhm,
So the wound is first like, it's maybe it starts externally and then it becomes like a self-inflicted, like keeps digging because they're feeling it and they're
mhm,
picking at it.
mhm,
I think so many parents, with punishing the children, the wound gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
mhm,
And exactly with taking that archetype, and so many of these kids are ready to be of service.
mhm,
And so I think part of the solution is giving them the opportunity to do so. Like
mm,
with my middle son, where he would, I don't know if he has this archetype, but this is just as an example. When he was in elementary school, he would be very like, he would cause trouble. He would be disruptive in class. He would say inappropriate things. And part of the solution that we came up with the teacher was give him a task to be of service to the class. Is he going to
mm,
stand in front of, like at the door welcoming the kids into class? Is he going to be like going to like bring stuff for you to help, like your aid? Or how do you involve these kids in a way that is being of service? Because that's what raises their self-esteem. That's what ends up healing the wound. And then the
Mm,
community around them is not so focused on this kid is bad.
right, right, right.
Is yeah. So
Yeah, it's
when
not just like this automatic like label kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Okay. So, and then the last one is nature child. Friendships with animals, communication with nature spirits. And then the shadow attributes is a tendency to abuse animals, people, and the environment.
Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I am wondering if, I mean, I would suppose that any of the child archetypes could turn into, you know, a psychopath or a sociopath,
Yeah.
but like I guess for me in particular, this one, um, because it talks about abuse,
Abuse. Mm-hmm.
it makes me wonder if, folks out there who are doing harm and are acting out in that
Yeah.
kind of extreme way. Um, it just makes me wonder if,
Well, when you read that, what came to me was the deep connection with nature and how our world abuses nature. I mean, we abuse
mm,
it on a daily basis. And so
yeah.
I think that it's possible that some of these nature children are so connected with Mother Earth
Mm,
that they feel the pain that we're inflicting on it.
ah,
And so it's almost, I mean, it's like the wounded child that then
right,
hurts others. It's they don't know how to cope with this pain.
right.
And so they abuse it back.
Yeah.
And like, the kid who like hits themselves on the head when they're
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Like,
that's what came to me when you read that.
no, that's really, really interesting and very insightful. Like the folks who kind of cut themselves. Like
Yeah.
it's like the need to like the release of whatever,
Mhm.
kind of tension or emotion has kind of built up, which, hearing you talk about that, um, it's like the feelings, the emotion, like part of part of what comes up, and folks tend to not always have the tools to navigate sometimes when those feelings or emotions come up, or whatever it is, and then because they get stuck in it. It gets stuck
Yes.
instead of being able to move through, because part of it is, you know we've all chosen the life lessons that we're here to learn, and so not all lessons are comfortable.
Mhm.
Some of them are uncomfortable, and sometimes there is pain in learning a lesson and growing. And but if you're in resistance, like, you're having the feeling, you're overwhelmed, you don't have the tools to navigate the feelings and being
Yeah.
overwhelmed,
Yeah.
then you're not letting those feelings kind of move through you. And if they don't move through you, then that's where they get stuck.
Mhm.
And sometimes, it can be something that happened on the playground when you were in third grade, that gets stuck in a
Right.
particular place. And then you're in college on some field playing, soccer or something with friends. And all of a sudden, like, what happened in the third grade is like the
Right. Yeah.
feelings
Comes
of
right
that
back.
are right there, comes
Yeah.
right back.
Yeah.
So that to me, I think, is very, very interesting in connection with what you've said about the nature child, and so many of them being so sensitive to um, Mother Earth, and what's been going on and how we've been abusing the planet, instead of, they're like so focused on the pain because the pain of it is overwhelming,
Yeah.
and haven't been able to shift to the how am I of service? How do I educate? How do I support a transition from abusing the earth to
Cherish
not
it
abusing?
and
Right.
honor
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think that to me, that was a very, very powerful statement. Like, we're like every day, just us living our lives every day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing something that is harmful,
Yeah.
because not because our intention is to
No.
harm. It's the way that like our society is set
Yeah.
up, our culture is set up.
Yeah.
There's there we're in process of developing other ways to be, and we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So that was an intro to the child archetypes, to the 6 child archetypes from Carolyn Myss's deck. And thank you all for joining us. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you feel like this video might be helpful for somebody, please share. And also, if you are interested in finding out more information about Dr. or myself, you'll find links to our websites below.
Yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.